Iran had a grand plan to defeat Israel and challenge the West. But thus far, it has backfired pretty spectacularly. I do say thus far. So hang on, and we're going to dive into this deep. Now, I have talked about how China had this great philosophy from Mao Zedong to surround the cities with the countryside, and that's how they took out the Kuomintang, the KMT party of China, and won the Chinese Civil War. They extended that worldwide to look at countries as the countryside to other nations like the United States. Now, Iran was doing the same thing. And Iran being a vassal state of China, it could be understand how this is part of their plan and also maybe part of the greater plan of China. All that said, Iran had surrounded Israel with proxies. Iran had was dominant with al-Assad in Syria. They were in tight with him. Iran was in Lebanon with Hezbollah, not the Lebanese government itself, but Hezbollah, very heavily armed with thousands and thousands of missiles in southern Lebanon. Iran was supporting Hamas. Iran had militias in Iraq. Iran had the Yemenis, the Houthis in Yemen. They had Israel surrounded with well armed, well fortified forces that had thousands and thousands of missiles. So they thought that they finally had reached a point that they could take Israel. They launched their campaign on 7 October 2023. They thought they were going to win. They thought, and so did Hamas. Hamas was willing to make some major sacrifices. They thought that by attacking Israel, that they knew that in a very heinous attack, they took out, I believe, 1,995 civilians. We're talking men, women, children. It was a horrendous attack. It was intended to be horrendous because they wanted Israel to strike back, because they wanted to take Israel down in the court of world opinion. And they did somewhat, but not quite enough. It didn't go far enough to serve their purposes. They thought they would make Israel a pariah state, and that would justify and enable attacks by other proxies and more from Hezbollah and Iran. They thought they could actually take Israel out finally. They thought they had all the cards. But Israel had some trump cards in their intel. And one of the first things Israel did was the pager attack, which took out a lot of the Hezbollah leadership. And Israel has banged real heavily on Hamas. And I'm not here to justify what happened in any regard. I'm just here to explain it, that this is what went down. Israel hit Gaza and Hamas exceedingly hard, and a lot of people are complaining about that, and that could be understood. But see, Hamas used, this is all part of the big plan. They used the hospitals and the kids and the schools because they stationed their military at those locations just to get Israel to attack them. That's pretty heinous in itself because they put a lot of their own innocents at risk in order to get the world opinion turned against Israel. So a very heinous thing to use kids like that. But you got to remember, the Iranians also used their kids to clear the minefields ahead of the troops in their war with Iraq. A lot of people forget this. They don't have the same regard for life that people in the West do, even their children, the innocents. They view things very differently than us, and we judge them by our own lens, and they know that, and they're using that against us. But anyway, all that said, the Israelis really hammered Hezbollah hard. They, when that Patriot attack occurred, I believe that took out Nasrallah, the head of the Hezbollah, either that or the subsequent attacks. They took Nasrallah out real soon. And they took out a lot of the leadership in Iraq, in the Hezbollah leadership in southern Lebanon. And their attacks really pretty much neutralized Iraq, except somewhat the Houthis in Yemen. They did attack them too. So maybe they pushed them down a little bit, but attacking the Houthis is proven, putting them out of business is proven exceedingly difficult, as we may see with the deeper dug, more heavily armed Iran today. All that said, this led to some, a few occasions of counterstrikes and missiles between Israel and Iran, and there was the initial one, and then there was the 12-day war, which Israel just went in to take out as much as they could in Iran, and Trump got involved right at the end to attack the nuclear facilities in Isfahan, Fordo, and Natanz. But the situation is that they didn't get everything there. But all that aside, what we know is that all this war, even to the day, what's happening today, could be viewed in the context of what started on 7 October 2023, or even earlier. You depend on how you want to draw the line in the sand. But I said for a long time, I've been saying for a long time, that the whole reason, and I'm not supporting this. I was saying because al-Assad actually protected the Christian population in this country. And so he wasn't all bad, and not maybe as bad as some people made him out to be. I think that the charges of chemical weapons that he allegedly used were probably trumped up. That said, I said all along for a long time back that the reason that Israel wanted to take out Syria, specifically the al-Assad regime there, was because they wanted to clear their left flank, not to have that on their left flank when they attacked Iran. They always wanted to go after Iran. But so in a sense, this might have been, in Iran's mind, a means of self-defense, not only to attack Israel, but either way, they were both out to get each other. But Israel at the time didn't have tankers. They couldn't really get their flights out there. And Biden withheld the tankers he had bought from the United States just because he didn't want them to launch an attack like that. So this whole chessboard has been moving for some time. But Israel surprised them. Their attacks were far more effective than Iran imagined they would be, far more effective. So they really knocked down, what they had is they had forces on their right flank with the Houthis in Yemen. They had al-Assad on their left flank, a nation that was directly behind Iran. And then they had the Hamas on their back. So that made it very difficult for Israel just to hit Iran. They couldn't hit Iran until they had took out a lot of these countryside elements around, using the Chinese analog, around Israel. And they did knock them down. Now, they haven't entirely taken them out. I mean, Hamas is still there somewhat, but in very extremely weakened state. Hezbollah isn't what they used to be, but they're still there. As we can see, they're managing to fire missiles into North Israel. And the Houthis are still there too, but they've kind of held back. They're talking about, launching stuff now and shutting down the Red Sea. But all that, so they still may do that. So all these things are still in play, but it's been part of a big chessboard, and Israel knocked the countryside proxies down to the level that they felt confident, starting with the 12-day war, to launch into Iran. So the 12-day war was just the opening scene. Now we see the final, well, probably not the final battle, but we see a major war going on there today. I am convinced that probably, not absolutely sure, I mean, the United States and or Israel might do something to divert this. They will probably, the Iranians will probably survive this. Their whole strategy is to weather all the attacks on them and survive as a organization, or through their various elements. They did spread their control out. They decentralized it so that they had each state province in Israel was a unique power center. So they didn't rely on the central government to operate. So that's part of their grand long-term strategy of survival, and be able to continue the war on their terms. Now, their whole strategy is to out-survive the Trump administration essentially right now, because they know that we have limited munitions. They know the markets are putting pressure on the Trump administration, and they know that there's midterms coming up. It's said that probably just from a munition standpoint, Trump probably only has a month in this campaign. So if they can outlast Trump and survive as a regime in some fashion, although it may not be a centrally controlled fashion, that they can reemerge one day. And if the midterms turn against Trump hard enough, that they will that no administration in the future would be willing to commit to what Trump has done. It would be like verboten. There would be such a bad taste because it may totally take down the Trump administration. If they lose the House and the Senate, the Democrats are pledged to actually impeach and will acquit. That's their plans, both Trump and Vance. That puts the Speaker of the House, who would be Democrat, in charge as president. So you can see this could be a total political earthquake in the United States. So Trump is taking a big risk in this war, and he knows it. He's trying to figure out an exit plan at this point, but he has to, in his mind, have some military victory in order to get an off-ramp to claim that he can get out. So there's something else he's got to pull off that's much bigger. But will it succeed in the long term? We don't know. This is why I'm saying that this war may continue in different form. Iran may then turn around and rebuild, and it may take them years. It depends on how well Israel will mow the grass, their term for attacking those that they've knocked down and kind of keeping them down. They are not likely to have the assistance in the U.S. if the Trump administration loses the House and the Senate and the presidency. So any subsequent Republican administration just will have a bad taste in their mouth. They're probably not going to go there again. And that may give Iran the free hand to really build up and do what they want to do if they can deal with Israel. But they're trying to still bring Israel down in the court of world opinion. So the whole war is ongoing and is likely to continue for some time. I think the the Iranians have played Trump, have played him hard. They made him think that they would negotiate, and he came out, claiming, that certain things would happen, that they were going to end the war with these negotiations just a few days ago. And the Iranians weren't serious about it. They just wanted him to make announcements that he couldn't support and to make him look like a fool. So they're really trying to get him out of the White House, because then they know they've got a lot more latitude to maneuver, because there's been a whole succession of presidents and both parties, none of them willing to deal with Iran like Trump has. So again, I'm not justifying any of this stuff either way. I'm just painting the picture of what it is, the geopolitics of it, and where it can go. So again, the Iranian strategy was to surround Israel with all their proxies, and they thought they was going to take Israel out within just a matter of a few years. They thought that it was done, that they had overwhelming forces with the rockets and Hezbollah. They did not foresee how that would play out. So that did backfire them. That kind of attacks they got on their homeland did backfire on them. They did, after the 12-day war, realize what was coming. And that's why they enabled the fracturing of the command decentralization that they permitted inside of Iran, which was very substantial. And that may indeed enable them to survive as some sort of Iranian regime similar to what they started out with prior to the war. We don't know exactly who will be in charge. It seems the IRGC is running things now. Given that, you can expect the future comeback. They will be much more of a hardliner state, and they will be angry and really want to take retribution in some form at some time in the future. And we're likely not to be prepared for it if business is not taken care of on this round, which is probably, the chances are better, I would say, on their side than ours, because they're fighting an asymmetric warfare type that we weren't prepared for. But it will be a long game. Can they succeed in the long term in this long game? So they're partly planning on assistance from China, which they didn't get in this war. They did get materials, but they didn't get the kind of backup they might have thought so far. Now, it is still possible that that China will move on Taiwan, because right now the United States is probably going to be wrapped up over there in Iran for another month. Our munitions are way down. In a sense, we're weaker than we've ever been in terms of being able to deal with China and distracted. So if China can muster it, they might make their move on Taiwan this coming April, which is right upon us. We're real close to April, and the sea states in the Strait of Taiwan will be calm in April and best calm again in September. They might go up for September. Now, all the analysts decided 2027 has been the year that Iran would be ready to China be ready to make its move, but that may wait, because or we don't know yet. Sun Tzu warfare, you don't tell the enemy what you're planning to do. So when they come out and said 2027, you can bet they had something else in mind. But a lot of analysts think that's when they'll have their stuff together. But a lot of that is probably prejudiced by the announcements that China themselves have made. China would be likely to try to do something before they told the world they would be ready. And now might be, geopolitically, right now might be the best time for China to strike if they can. But then again, they might try to do soft power in a sense by blockading, which is not soft power, it's a military action. It's an act of war to blockade Taiwan. Now, we might see that happen. We don't know exactly how that would play out, but it is likely and possible that if they think the United States is going to chime in on that move to attack us first, they may think we're too weak, that we may not go for a response to them immediately while we're distracted in Iran. We took a lot of our THAAD missile launchers and removed them from Japan and South Korea and took them over to Iran. And so half of the world's THAAD missile launchers are over there, and all of them had their radar systems wiped out by Iranian missiles and drones. So those THAAD units are not in good shape right now, and they went through enough munitions that's claimed it would take up to 7 years to replace those missiles. So the United States is in a bad spot right now if China chooses to move now. Now, we don't know what they will do. They may not be internally ready for that, or they might. We just don't know yet. Time will tell. But it's definitely a time to be very aware of what's going down. And then again, they might want to do it later, so to kind of give cover for Iran to rebuild. They really had hoped that Iran would have had more success in the Mideast so far than they've had. But they're probably happy that we have knocked our missile count down. And it's going to take a while to come back. So even next year, 2027, when they said it'd be ready, our missile count won't be back to what it was before this war, before the 12-day war, before we played whack-a-mole with the Houthis. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. The time of danger is still here. And as you may know, I've done several videos, a couple of them, where I've laid out Iran's apparent plans to use bioweapons against the United States. And the fact of the matter is they are developing bioweapons. So whether that was part of their actual plan or not, it looks like it probably is. Whether that speech I quoted was accurate or not is probably don't make any difference. Just look at what they're doing. Look at the body language. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they're doing. But that speech was never intended to be public in the first place. So I'm just pointing these things out so you'll understand the bigger picture, because there is a big picture, and Iran is a big part of it. And somewhat we may have played into China's hand by attacking Iran and taking our missile count down. But could it have been avoided? That's a big question. If it was avoided, would we have paid the price for it later, given how much Iran is developing missiles, how fast they were developing missiles, how fast they were developing drones? Very high rate. We definitely wouldn't have been able to deal with that later down the road as well as now. And we're not dealing with that too well now because they've oversaturated our forces. They've just had so many missiles, and they got a lot of bunkers that are deep. Some of the claims are that some of these bunkers may be 1,600 feet under rock, granite. And that is nothing we've got will reach that. It's kind of like Cheyenne Mountain. You'd have to use like successive nukes to take a facility out like that, or troops on the ground to go in and basically burn them out, like our soldiers in War II that went into the Japanese tunnels on the islands and with flamethrowers. It might take something like that. So that may be what the 82nd Airborne is intended to do. I don't know that but we don't know yet. There's just a lot we don't know, but we're going to see a lot going down in the next month. By the end of April, we'll have a lot clearer picture of what's going to rise from this smoke, what's going to be left over, what's going to happen. And of course, by November, we'll know what impact it really had right here at home politically. So these things are something that all has to be taken into account. But again, just to back up, Iran had the plan to take out Israel. And they launched it on the 7th of October, 2023. Hamas wasn't that alone. They had Iran's backing for that. They might have even been goaded into it by Iran. I don't know. But Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the militias in Iraq are all proxies to Iran. and Iran planned to play those. That again, that was the surrounding the cities with the countryside approach, following the philosophy of Mao Zedong that Iran had adopted. And China had put a lot of money into Iran. Well, $48 billion on one occasion just to prop up the regime itself. They were buying their oil from Iran, the embargoed oil. They were getting it cheap. So it served China's interest too in helping maintain their edge and their industrial development, which, can be used against the United States, because the United States has won every war it's won since maybe the War of 1812 by attrition, by outproducing the enemy. How do you outproduce the world's factory? That's why it's critical that we reshore as much industry as we can in the United States as quick as we can. And we don't have enough labor force to really do it. So we'll have to rely, hopefully, on robotics or something to make up that deficit. All that said, we've got a big world challenge in front of us. It's not going to end anytime soon. This particular act of the play may be over in a month. But what comes next? When the smoke clears, what's going to be left? What's going to emerge from the rubble, from the ashes? We don't know yet. It's my hope that the people in Iran who were protesting for freedom will find that freedom in some fashion. But that's going to be exceedingly difficult to do, even with the Iranian forces knocked down as hard as they have been. Because who has the firepower? Who's got the shoulder-fired smoke poles? The Iranian IRGC's Beige forces, and it would be still exceedingly hard for the protesters to overcome that at any time, even despite all of the attacks that have occurred. The United States has already hit Iran over 10,000 times now. 10,000 strikes, probably 20,000, including what the Israelis have been doing. So that just goes to show you don't take over a land with air power and missiles. It takes ground forces. Now, the idea with the troops that we may put on the ground, it's going to be surgical strikes there too. They're not going in as an occupation force. You're not going to take a couple thousand from the 82nd Airborne, 5,000 Marines, and occupy a country like Iran. And Iran's talking about mobilizing 1 million people now. That 1 million people being mobilized, though, is mostly civilians. Are not going to be very effective. Just think back. Maduro had 1 million people. He mobilized. Did that save him? No. So that's not the first time we've heard that song and dance. I'm not expecting a lot from that. It will be the military and IRGC that will be the main opponent within Iran. This 1 million-man army they're talking about. I don't even know if they can find 1 million, but that's neither here nor there. I don't expect that to be very effective. So that's the bottom line. The bottom line is that we've got a lot of fog in the battlefield. The fog of war is heavy. And given that there's a lot of claims and counterclaims right now, but the smoke will clear, and we'll have to see what arises from the rubble. That said, you can help my channel. I'm going to share something with you and help yourselves if you're willing to get away from the nasty, dirty, contaminated products that you're using day to day, buying from the big box stores and Wally World and places like that. Anywhere, any grocery store, they're selling these over 550 consumer brands. You can get them in some of these stores and shops and outlets, and they're loaded with chemicals. All these different brands are controlled by just 12 companies, and they're loaded with chemicals, heavy metals, and stuff that is not good for you and your family. These 12 companies also have interest owned by the big 3 asset management companies. Oops. Anyway, that fell out. And I got a way for you to get away from that. It's called switchwithgreg.com. This is a website I set up. It's my website. If you come to switchwithgreg.com, we can get you into a family-owned manufacturer for over 500 different products that is clean and non-toxic. They test them for safety extensively. They don't have the chemicals in them, the heavy metals. They don't have all that stuff that I've done several videos already covering. And they are, even the cleaners are plant-based. It's also an American-owned company. All the stuff's made in America, so you support American jobs. And the company don't do any advertising, so everything goes into the product instead of having to spend a lot of money on advertising. So that's a good thing. So all you got to do is fill out this form, hit the submit form, And my friend and member of the community, Lisa, will get back with you and bring you into this. So with that, I'm going to say you need to really consider where we're at with this stuff. So now the one video that's not got enough people watching it is the one on China. You need to understand what China's game is. So that video is going to be right here. I'm going to say thank you all for watching. And with that, Greg out.